And today we're talking about enduring hard times. And in this passage, we're going to discover Jesus going through a really hard time in his own life and him enduring it through prayer, through perseverance, and through his own faith. So we're going to see Jesus preparing for something that is like really extreme, that sets an example for us going through the tough times that we have to go through. Even though our tough times usually aren't going to be as extreme as crucifixion, we all go through hard times. And Jesus is going to set an example for us of what it looks like, how to endure those hard times. Mark chapter 14, starting at verse 32. And they went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took with him Peter and James and John, and began to be greatly distressed and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch." And going a little farther, he fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but what you will." And he came and found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not watch 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know how to answer him. And he came the third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? It is enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." And immediately while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests of the scribes and elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Seize him and lead him away under guard." And when he came, he went up to him at once and said, "Rabbi," and he kissed him. And they laid hands on him and seized him. But one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, "Have you come out as against a robber, with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." And they all left him and fled. Here we've got Jesus preparing his heart for the cross, because he knows what's coming. It has never been a surprise to him. It's a surprise to his disciples, absolutely. They're kind of dim-witted their whole time with Jesus, and they never get it. Even though he keeps trying to drum it into them. "Hey guys, this is coming up." They never get it. You see, they want to follow someone who is a champion, who is victorious. Not a loser, not someone who's going to go and not accomplish anything. Everybody likes to follow a winner. They have high hopes and expectations for Jesus, for who he is, what he is going to do, the power that he brings, because they've seen him do the miracles. They've been following him because he had his ministry for a couple years now. They've seen the potential, and they want to follow a champion. And they have a hard time understanding that he is willingly going to sacrifice himself. And so Jesus comes, he says, I've asked just one thing. You guys wait while I pray. I understand you don't get what's coming, but this is big for me. All I've asked is that you wait and just hang with me while I'm praying and going through this. And so the first point we get from this message is about the weight of life. Because Jesus is carrying this huge weight in his life, and his disciples don't see the weight that he's carrying. Like, they don't comprehend it. Have you ever been going through something tough in your life, and when you're trying to explain it to someone else, they just don't get it? And so you're trying to pour your heart out, like, I'm going through all this stuff, and they're like, oh, man, that's too bad, right? And you're like, oh, you don't get it, because this is heavy on me. This is hurting my very soul, and you're acting like I just stubbed my toe. Like, you don't get it. The weight of life pulls us down, and that's what Jesus is going through. He says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. But there's good news. Psalm 34 promises this: the Lord is near to the brokenhearted, and he saves the crushed in spirit. You see, God knows what we are going through. It doesn't change the fact that we go through it, but we take comfort knowing that we are not alone. And when you guys are going through a real tough time in life, sometimes it feels like we are all alone. No one else understands what I'm going through. No one else has ever been through this before. I'm the only person who has ever had to suffer like this. No one else gets me. And the Bible says, no, God gets you, because he is close to the brokenhearted and those who feel crushed in their spirits. But that brings us to our second point, and the second thing I want you guys to see is that there is strength in submitting to God. You see, Jesus says here in Mark, Father, everything is possible. Please take this cup from me. But not what I will, but what you will. You see, he's subjecting himself to the will of God. He's not dumb. He knows what's coming. He doesn't want to go through it. He says, but I understand that you have a picture and a purpose and a plan that goes beyond my immediate needs and desires. So even in his prayer time, when he's asking God to change it, he's saying, God, even though this is what I want, even more than that, I want what you want. And that's the powerful thing about our life's problems and struggles when we approach God in prayer. It's that taking it to God doesn't change the situation. It changes us. I do a lot of counseling with Marines who are going through times. And the number one thing that everybody wants is for their situation to change. How badly do you want those problems to stop? How desperately do you want your situation to change? Jesus was no different. He wanted his situation to change. But through his prayer time, he said, it's not about what I want, it's about God's purpose, about God's bigger picture and God's plan. So I'm going to submit myself to God's will instead of my own. And through his prayer time, we see the situation isn't changed, his attitude is changed. And my encouragement to you guys is whatever you're going through, whatever tough time, and if you're a human being, I promise you, you will go through tough time. You can't avoid it. That's just part of being human. But no matter what you're going through, when we take it to God and say, God, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm struggling with, this is what I'm wrestling with, telling God your issues and opening up in honest prayer probably won't change the situation, but it will change you. The third and final piece I want you to see is that Jesus calls us to persistent prayer. Very rarely will someone just wake up never having run 1 mile and say, you know what? Today, I'm going to tackle a half marathon. That's not normal. You put time into it. You put training into it. Persistence and endurance are how you win the race. And that's just like us with prayer. We need to develop a routine of constantly talking to God. Jesus frequently went off by himself. He told people, hey, you hang out, I'm going to go pray. I'm just going to go away and do my thing because I need to talk to God. Even here in this one short passage, we see Jesus leaving multiple times, talking to God about the same things. You see, there is power in persistent prayer. Again, not to change the situation, but to change us. You guys, through the weight of life and all the garbage that we go through our act of submitting ourselves to God, and with the power of persistent prayer, we can find our way to hang in there, to walk the path that God has put before us, in the same way that Jesus found the endurance to walk his path. Not easy. He knew what was coming, but he was able to do it. I encourage you, share your struggles with God. He understands. You're not alone. But understand that just because you tell God the struggles you're going through doesn't mean he's going to stop it. It may not change the situation, but it will change you. And let Jesus' example be an example for how we can live our lives and how we can get through the tough times that we go through.